Okay, so this is going to be a PowerPoint that will be covering Chapter 6 of Advancing Vocabulary Skills. Let me just read through the words real quickly. So we have attrition, which is a noun, circumvent, which is a verb, cohesive, which is an adjective, grievous, which is also an adjective. There's inundate, that ends in that ate sound again, so that's a verb. Oblivious, which is an adjective. Reticent, also an adjective. Robust, another adjective. Sanction, and I forget if this is listed as a verb or a noun, but it is both of them. And the last of them is vociferous. So let's go through these ones. So the first one here is attrition. Now, attrition, what attrition is a natural loss of individuals. So if we look at the two examples here, the first example is talking about sports teams lose players from attrition. So there's on any sports team, professional, let's say professional, there's always going to be people who are every season who are going to be leaving, who need to be replaced. So there's those who retire, there's those who are traded to another team, there's those who are injured. Colleges also have a naturally high rate of attrition, again, from a variety of reasons. Some people stop studying because they don't have enough money to continue. Some people end up moving. Northern Virginia Community College has a very high rate of loss of individuals because people come to the college for a variety of reasons, but the number of people who continue on is actually pretty low. So every year there's attrition, meaning a loss of people. Our next one here is circumvent, and circumvent means to avoid. One of the things I like to do when I'm looking at words is to look at words that are similar or sound similar. So if we look at the beginning of this one, we have this circ, which is similar to circle. Now if we think of half of a circle, it's rounded, and when I think of circumvent, I think of it in that way, meaning to go around. So circumvent means to avoid something. One of the things we also often have to circumvent here in Northern Virginia is traffic. So if there's an accident or a lot of traffic in a certain place, we might choose a different route so that we can circumvent the traffic, so that we can get around it. So normally when we talk about circumvent, we're talking about actually avoiding physical things. But sometimes we can also use circumvent, meaning, so for example, if your boss, maybe your direct supervisor doesn't really like you, and you want a raise or something like that, and you know that if you talk to your supervisor, they're not going to give you the raise. So you can actually circumvent your supervisor and go and talk to the owner of the company, which means that you're going around, or you're avoiding your manager. So again, whenever we're talking about circumvent, we're talking about avoiding something on the way to another goal. So physically, circumvent means you're going around to get to your destination. In the situation with work, you're circumventing a person to get to what you want, which would be more money. The next one here is cohesive. And cohesive means connected. Again, here we can take a look at the word parts and think of other words that might be similar. So if we look at the co part, co means with, and we've had a word earlier in this book that starts with that same co, and that one was collaborate. It sounds slightly different, but remember that collaborate means to work with someone. But cohesive if we take the second part of the word adhesive, there's the word adhesive, which is another name for glue or for tape. So an adhesive is something that sticks, right? That makes things stick. So when we think of describing something as cohesive, it's when things stick together, making things stick together. So in the example of the pie dough, if you're making pie or if you're making bread, you want to make sure that the pie dough is cohesive, that it sticks together. If it falls apart like cake batter, in general, cake batter is not that cohesive. It's pretty liquidy, and it will fall apart. But certainly for bread, if the bread isn't cohesive, you can't form it into the shape that you want, or it'll fall apart. So we can talk about cohesive in terms of like physical things, but we can also talk about cohesive, like in the second example, in terms of a family. So if a family is cohesive, it means that they stick together. So even there's the saying in English, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. What that means is that when things get difficult, people who are tough, or in this case, groups that are cohesive, get together and accomplish, get going, get together and accomplish the goal that they're setting out for. The next one here is grievous, and this one I always have a hard time pronouncing because it looks like grievous, but it's actually grievous, so it's a long E. The meaning of it is terrible. But grievous means a little bit more than terrible. Grievous is connected to the word grieve, and some of you may know that word. Grieve means to mourn or to feel sad about the loss of something. Oftentimes that loss is a death. So if someone in your family dies, the time that you spend mourning them and feeling sad and missing them, which can be a long time, is called the grieving period. So when we think about grievous as being terrible, we mean it's really terrible either because it's causing death or caused by death. So in the first example here, we're talking about the death again of a pet, right, is causing a horrible loss, that kind of painful loss that you feel when someone dies. In the second example, it's talking about the killing of these two leaders. What this did, their death caused significant damage to society, but also to the movements that they were working for. The next one here is inundate, and this one's what it means to flood. The picture down at the bottom is actually a good example. It says, "I'm so inundated with paperwork, I can't even find my desk." So when we talk about flood, really we're not talking about it so much as in terms of water, although we can, right? We can say that a house, the house was inundated with water, it was flooded with water. But oftentimes it's used for requirements from work or from school. So in the I'm trying to think in the example of work, if you're inundated with work, it means that your boss, or if you have your own company, you have so many orders that you're constantly working. You can't catch your breath. During the semester, especially when you get to midterm of a semester, you're really inundated with work. It's like assignment on top of assignment on top of assignment. So inundate can be used both for that physical meaning of flooding, and also in terms of like the being overwhelmed with the amount of work or the number of assignments that you have to do. The next one here is oblivious, and this just means is not noticing. Now, the word that this reminds me of, some of you will be familiar with, and some of you may not be, is the word oblivion. And oblivion is like, I think of it as like nothingness. So oblivion is, some people who may not believe in God or may not believe in an afterlife may believe that after you die, you just sort of go to oblivion. There's nothing there, no existence. You're not in heaven and you're not in hell, God forbid. But when we talk about oblivious, it's as though you're in that sort of state where you're not aware of anything, where you don't notice anything that's going on. Oblivious is often used to describe people who aren't paying attention to something. So if you say that someone is oblivious, it's really a negative thing. It means that they're not paying attention to something that you feel that they should be paying attention to. We all have what we call blind spots. Those of you guys who have taken driver's ed should know that expression. But there's the blind spot, over your right shoulder when you're driving, where you can't see that area in your rear view mirrors, in either of your mirrors. So when we think of oblivious, we're thinking of those blind spots, those areas where we don't pay attention to or we can't pay attention to. Our next word here is reticent. And what reticent means, I'm going to say quiet, but we don't want, reticent doesn't just mean quiet, it means reluctant to get involved in something. If you look on, let me get the page open here, but if you look in your book on page 39, the longer definition for reticent is number 4, quiet or uncommunicative. But the second part is, I think, is a better definition, reluctant to speak out. If you're reticent or if you're reluctant, means that you're maybe nervous or you're unwilling to either do something or say something. So in the first one, in the first example here, if you're saying Lamar is reticent about his first marriage, it means that he doesn't really like to talk about his first marriage. Maybe something bad happened there, maybe he's embarrassed of it, but if you're reticent, yeah, you're quiet about it, but you're quiet because you don't want to share that information. One of the things that I find that a lot of people are reticent to do, especially ESL students, once they get out of ESL classes, a lot of ESL students are reticent to speak up in class because maybe they don't feel confident about it, or they're worried that maybe somebody's going to make fun of them. I also find that just in general, students tend to be very reticent about going and speaking to the professor if they're having a problem or if they're having a difficulty. So they're being quiet, but they're quiet because they're uncomfortable saying something or speaking up. The next one here is robust, and robust, strong and well. Another word that we can use for robust is healthy. Robust is often used for describing people, or describing things that are living, or describing things that in general can improve or can get worse. So for example, you can talk about the economy as being robust, because the economy can get better and it can also get worse. We can talk about a plant being robust, because a plant can be healthy and be getting better, or it can be getting worse. The other word that it uses in the book is vigorous, which has this meaning of energetic, or having a lot of energy to grow and to improve. Yeah. I'll stop. So our next word here is sanction. And okay, so here again, it's used as a verb, but it's also used as a noun. In this one, sanction as a verb, what it means is to give approval for. Now, I think that most people are more familiar with the word sanction as a noun because we hear about it in the news all the time. So you hear about sanctions against Iran or sanctions against Russia or sanctions against Venezuela or whatever country it may be at the time. And in that case, what a sanction means is that you're preventing you're keeping something from happening. You're not allowing certain people to trade. So the verb meaning is actually the complete opposite of the noun meaning, because to sanction something as a verb means to say, yeah, it's okay to give permission to do something. So we can talk about it as another word you could use is authorize, or in the book it gives allow or approve. So that when we're saying to sanction something, it means officially you say that it's okay. Officially, it's something that the person is able to do, or the school is able to do. All right, so our last one here is vociferous, and this is an adjective as well, and loud. Now again, I always like to look at words and relate them to words I already know. So I always think with vociferous of the word voice, right? So when I talk about someone who's vociferous, it means they're using their voice, and in this case, they're using it in a loud manner. When we talk about vociferous, it's not just loud in volume. So we wouldn't really say the music was vociferous. Like you wouldn't say to your kid or your roommate saying, turn down that vociferous music, it's driving me crazy. Because vociferous really means loud, but for the purpose of complaining about something. Complaining about a mistreatment, complaining about something that you disagree with. So if we think about protesters, people who go out on the street and are shouting things, those people are vociferous because they're loud, but the reason for their loudness is that they want something to change. In a class, actually vociferous in a class would be the opposite of reticent. A person who is reticent is someone who's reluctant to speak out, but a person who is vociferous would be someone who would speak out and would complain if something went wrong. On page 39, vociferous is noisy, and it says expressing feelings loudly and intensely. But again, this one really is connected to being loud for a specific purpose. All right. So that's finished. So go ahead and do the online exercises with this one. And then if you have any questions, bring those to class and we will discuss them then. Take care. We'll see you in class. Bye.